The night she said she needed a husband by tomorrow felt like the kind of sentence that splits a life into before and after, the kind that arrives quietly and then detonates everything you thought you understood about yourself, responsibility, and fate. It wasn't the urgency alone that shook me, or the absurdity of time collapsing into a single day, but the weight behind her words, as if an entire history of loss, fear, and hope had been compressed into one desperate breath. I remember standing there with the city humming outside, my heart pounding with the knowledge that whatever choice I made next would ripple far beyond us, touching lives I had never planned to be responsible for. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unexpected ways ordinary people change each other's lives, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who believes in compassion, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel, The Kindness Chronicles, so stories like this can keep finding the people who need them most. I had never imagined myself as anyone's solution, let alone the answer to a problem that sounded so impossibly final. My life until that point had been modest and carefully contained, shaped by routines that kept pain at arm's length. I lived alone in a small apartment that carried the quiet echoes of a past I rarely revisited, a place where evenings were filled with the soft glow of lamps and the comfort of predictability. Responsibility had always been something I rationed carefully, offering it to work, to aging relatives, to the bills that arrived like clockwork, but never to another person's survival. Yet standing there, feeling the gravity of her need, I realized how thin the walls were between comfort and crisis. She was someone I had known for a while, though not intimately, a presence that had drifted in and out of my days without ever demanding much. There had always been a sadness about her that didn't shout but lingered, a heaviness behind her eyes that suggested life had asked more of her than it had given back. Over time, fragments of her story had surfaced in pieces, hints of a family tangled in expectations, of traditions that weighed heavier than love, of a future that had been promised but never secured. Still, nothing had prepared me for the raw urgency of that night, for the realization that her entire sense of safety hinged on a decision that had to be made before the sun rose again. The challenge wasn't just the impossibility of time but the layers of consequence that pressed in from every direction. Society had rules that didn't bend easily, families that judged without listening, and circumstances that punished hesitation. She wasn't asking for romance or comfort. She was asking for refuge disguised as commitment, for a shield strong enough to stand between her and a storm that had been gathering for years. I could feel the pull of empathy warring with the fear of entanglement, the instinct to help clashing with the instinct to protect my own fragile balance. As the hours passed, my mind became a battlefield of memories and imagined futures. I thought about my own parents, about how love in their time had been as much about survival as affection, about choices made not because they were ideal but because they were necessary. I remembered moments when strangers had extended kindness to me when I had nothing to offer in return, gestures that had quietly redirected my path. Those memories softened something in me, loosening the grip of fear just enough for another thought to take shape, a thought that felt reckless and inevitable all at once. The idea of offering my home felt both absurd and deeply human. My apartment was not grand or particularly welcoming to upheaval, but it was safe, and safety was what she needed more than anything else. The words formed in my mind before I fully understood their weight, an offer that came with conditions. Not of control but of honesty, boundaries shaped by respect rather than ownership. It was not a promise of forever, only a promise of shelter, of time to breathe, of a chance to face the world without standing alone. When the decision settled, it did so with a surprising calm, as if some deeper part of me had already accepted the path ahead. The immediate aftermath was chaotic, filled with hurried arrangements and the quiet shock of realizing that my life had shifted course overnight. Yet beneath the chaos was a strange clarity, a sense that even if the road ahead was uncertain, it was at least meaningful. The fear didn't vanish, but it became manageable, diluted by the knowledge that I had chosen compassion over convenience. Living together under such unusual circumstances was an exercise in vulnerability for both of us. Every shared space became a negotiation between past wounds and present needs. Mornings carried an awkward silence that slowly softened into something more comfortable, evenings filled with unspoken understanding rather than expectation. There were moments of tension when the weight of our arrangement pressed too hard, when the reality of pretending to be something we were not threatened to unravel the fragile peace we had built. Yet each time, patience stepped in where certainty failed, and we learned to navigate the gray areas with care. The world outside did not make things easy. Questions came wrapped in suspicion, assumptions delivered as facts, and judgments passed without mercy. Each encounter tested our resolve, forcing us to confront the cost of our decision again and again. There were nights when doubt crept in, whispering that we had taken on more than we could handle, that kindness sometimes demanded a price too high to pay. But there were also moments of quiet triumph, small victories that reminded us why we had chosen this path, glimpses of hope that flickered stubbornly against the darkness. As days turned into weeks, something unexpected began to grow in the spaces between obligation and empathy. It wasn't the sudden spark of romance or the neat arc of a storybook ending, but a deeper, steadier connection rooted in trust. We learned each other's fears and strengths, the habits formed by years of coping, the dreams that had been set aside but not extinguished. In offering her shelter, I found myself confronted with parts of my own heart I had long ignored, places softened by her presence, challenged by her resilience. The struggle was never linear. There were setbacks that threatened to undo everything, moments when the past reached forward with claws sharp enough to draw blood. Family pressures intensified, expectations hardened, and the fragile arrangement we relied on was tested in ways neither of us had anticipated. It became clear that kindness alone would not be enough. It would require courage, honesty, and a willingness to stand firm even when standing still felt impossible. Through it all, what surprised me most was how the act of helping transformed both of us. She began to reclaim pieces of herself that had been eroded by fear, finding confidence in the simple fact of being supported without condition. I discovered a capacity for commitment that went beyond obligation, a realization that opening my life to someone else did not diminish me but expanded the boundaries of who I could be. The apartment that had once echoed with solitude filled with the subtle rhythms of shared living, a testament to the quiet power of presence. Time did what it always does, smoothing rough edges and revealing truths that urgency had concealed. The original deadline that had driven us together faded into the background, replaced by choices made deliberately rather than in desperation. We faced those choices with a clarity born of shared experience, aware that whatever came next would be shaped not by fear but by mutual respect. The question of what we were to each other evolved naturally, freed from the pressure of labels and timelines, guided instead by what felt honest and sustaining. In the end, the story was never about needing a husband by tomorrow or offering a place to live as a solution. It was about what happens when ordinary people choose to step into each other's lives at their most vulnerable, when kindness becomes an act of quiet rebellion against a world that often demands indifference. It was about learning that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is open your door and trust that compassion will find its way through. If this story reached you, if it stirred something inside or reminded you of a moment when kindness changed your path, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need hope, and leave a heartfelt comment. Before you go, please comment this line: kindness can change everything. Your words help this story travel further and remind others that they are not alone. Thank you for being part of the Kindness Chronicles, and for believing that even the most unexpected choices can lead to something profoundly human.